You've been writing this book about the manosphere. What are some of the key... What surprised you writing about it? Has anything surprised you?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of stuff has surprised me. I mean, I'm just trying to think, because it's such a big subject in many ways. I think...
what is the manosphere, for those who don't know? Because some people won't know what the manosphere is.
Yeah, so the manosphere is kind of online. It starts online. It's not just online communities, but it's an online kind of anti-feminist space that goes from what started out as fairly apolitical, so you had like pickup artists, and then goes all the way to like the red pill movement, and even like bleeds into like MAGA, and you have like nowadays like incels, and men going their own way. It's kind of an anti-feminist movement that's concerned with men's issues, and adopts this kind of very stereotypical view of the gender binary. So it's kind of a hyper-masculinist movement that thinks, men should be like real men and women should be like more feminine. And I mean, that's kind of the gist of it.
At its most subtle, is that what we were talking about before with Jordan Peterson and telling men like, hey, come on, pull your socks up, and women don't necessarily have to go out with you unless you're good enough mate, kind of thing. Can it be a force for good is what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, Jordan Peterson I'd call more like manosphere adjacent. I feel like it's, I mean, again, as much as I have my issues with some of the things he talks about, I think it would be unfair to him to call him like a manosphere, strictly manosphere. Yeah, I mean, I think it's, I wouldn't say he's as extreme as a lot of people in the manosphere. I mean, I wouldn't really compare Jordan Peterson to someone like Andrew Tate. Okay. I think Jordan Peterson is a fairly traditional conservative. I feel like it would be a bit unfair to him to bracket him with people who say that women shouldn't have the vote. And I think someone may correct me, but I've never heard him saying anything like this. I mean, when he talks about culturally enforced monogamy, that was, again, to be fair to him, like, I think that I believe in women's liberation, but I think he was kind of wildly misinterpreted when he talked about marriage as the culture kind of encouraging people to get married, encouraging people to form these stable family units. He wasn't talking about the law forcing people to get married. I think that's, that would make him a manosphere figure, but I don't think he's really strayed into that territory.
Interesting. And then, so like we've both been on Chris Williamson's Modern Wisdom, and I think some people have suggested, that's sort of a manosphere podcast, but I think he's moved to deny that. So,
yeah.
So manosphere would be a much more extreme, pejorative, and less helpful kind of idea.
Yeah, no, I think like Chris Williamson, I think he's more of a self-help. It's more men's self-help, but it's more self-help. I wouldn't call him manosphere at all. It's a lot of the red pill stuff. It's almost a postmodern movement. A lot of those people will disregard data and evidence that doesn't that contradicts what they believe, and will kind of, it's quite pseudoscience-y as well. I think the manosphere does tend to be more extreme. It does tend to have a much more simplistic view of male-female relations. And at the extreme end, it wants to remove basic civil rights from women. And I don't think... I think it would be really unfair of me to bracket people who are just in the men's kind of self-help movement, to bracket them with people like that.
Do you think, so there is a space for sort of men's self-help? Is that quite necessary in today's world? Yeah,
no, absolutely. And I think Richard Reeves, for example, the academic, wrote a really good book on areas in society where men are falling behind. So, for example, university education, there's far fewer men go to university now than women go to university, and that gap is getting bigger. You have, male suicide is far more men commit suicide than women. And you also have, I've had an issue before where I had a woman who stalked me. And stalking happens to women a lot more than men, but it also happens to men. And it does feel like, I think sometimes, that there are certain conversations around like domestic violence or stalking, or, basically issues of equality where men are falling behind, or where men don't get any attention for their issues, because what
happened? Sorry. Tell us about that.
Oh no, it was just someone who spent kind of it was about 2 years just kind of pursuing me online. I'd met them in real life, but it got very extreme. So they're using kind of fake emails, email addresses pretending to be me. Social media accounts purporting to be me, contacting employers, spreading kind of malicious made up rumors, contacting like my girlfriend, contacting her family. It's it was just this deluge of like craziness, basically.
Had you spurned her advances? Was that what started it?
Yeah, it was someone who I'd like got together with like 3 times. Like we'd hooked up a few times. Like this is several years ago, and then we kind of broke it off. I didn't see her again, and someone who clearly had like mental health problems, but then I became this target for that. I got in the crosshairs of the wrong person, basically. But it doesn't feel like it. I wrote about that for the newspaper, and as I did research for that, it's kind of how rare those stories are actually given any kind of platform. You're given any kind of platform to tell that story, because yeah, it does happen to women a lot more, but you kind of, when you say that you're a man who's been through that, it feels like people take it less seriously. It's kind of, oh, you should be like flattered. I remember someone even said, oh, you should be like flattered or something. And it's like, yeah, but you don't really understand what this entailed.
How did that feel when that person said that?
Again, it just felt like I just didn't feel like they would say that if a woman said they'd had a stalker, and you know, lots of women do have stalkers. Lots of women, female friends of mine have had stalkers, and it's a horrible experience. But I don't feel like they would say that. I don't feel like they'd be so flippant about it. And I think, again, like I've never been a victim of domestic violence, but I have met men who have before, who have suffered violence at the hands of a woman, and it's a very difficult thing for them to admit publicly, because they feel less of a man for doing so, and also because the reaction they get from other people is often treats them as less of a man for having as they would see it, having let them that happen to themselves.
Mm-hmm. My fiance does martial arts. Should have me. Luckily, she's not violent, but I don't mean to make light of the situation, but and so that's the helpful manosphere side, and then obviously it can become quite extreme, and is incels where it leads to. And then I'm always hearing different accounts like, oh, incels are very dangerous, and then other people saying like, no, that's actually misconstrued, and the data shows that very few lead to like the school shootings and things like that. What's your take?
Yeah, I mean, if you go back to so kind of the beginning of the narrative of my book it's not really pickup art is a part of it, but it's also kind of, there's like Robert Bly and the mythopoetic men's movement, and like men coming together and kind of getting in touch with those kind of traditional male archetypes and stuff, which is similar to what Jordan Peterson talks about now. But you also had, like in the 90s and 2000s, you had the kind of early pickup artist movement getting together on the internet. And some of that was relatively benign. It was like how to approach someone in a coffee shop without just being either super needy or just being weird or creepy. Just kind of, which to me is kind of the self-help aspect of that. Like there was aspects of it, like sort your fitness out, make yourself a better prospect for the person you're going to be dating, sort your finances out, get a better place to live, get better clothes. Have something to say in a conversation that's not just like an interview style question with someone you meet in a bar or something. So it's not just, what's your name? What do you do for a job? Where do you live? Blah, blah. And it's just like this boring, have something slightly left field to say. I don't think that was necessarily bad, but what came with that was often this very regressive view of like gender roles, based on some of it on kind of a bastardized version of evolutionary psychology, where it's like women are like this, men are like this, and if you press these button, if you say these specific things, it's like a woman is like a piece of computer software; she will automatically like you. And yeah, I mean, there was kind of this misogynistic undercurrent to a lot of that stuff. Yes. And also treating women is very objectifying, not necessarily in the traditional sense, but it's objectifying in that you treat women at a bar as just sets. It's like you have this very militarized language. You treat women as just like, I'm going to approach these women and the feedback, they'll give me feedback, then I'll adjust my game. You're not really seeing them as human beings anymore. And I think some of that then led into the red pill stuff and the men going their own way. They were like, oh, the pickup stuff doesn't work, but they still took on the old view of women as kind of not quite equal to men, basically.
Is that what it means to be red pilled?
Yeah, I mean, to me, being red pilled, yeah. So to be red pilled in these communities, it means like in the Matrix, like you've taken the red pill and you've seen the world for how it really is, and you've seen how the truth of the world, you've seen the truth of female nature and how women really are, which is basically, according to the red pill, it's like women are superficial, hypergamous, so they just go after the most high status guy, they're ruthless. They'll screw you over unless you do all of these things and have red pill awareness.
Some of that's true of both sexes, isn't it?
Yeah.
This idea that men don't also go for the best possible woman. Like, what does that even mean? Like, of course we all do. We all go for whoever we like the most. That's just life.
Yeah, and there's a huge amount of hypocrisy as well around, so men are allowed to spin plates and sleep around, and a lot of these guys were in pickup as well, so they're teaching men that you should go out and have as much promiscuous sex as possible. And then at the same time they're really concerned about what a woman's body count is. So if a woman slept around a bit, it's like, oh, she's ruined, she's been run through, and they'll cite these kind of pseudo-scientific studies to say that, oh, the woman can't pair bond anymore, which is, a woman can't form an emotional attachment to someone anymore. And I like with some of this stuff, there's an element of you want to be realistic about dating. So when I first started to get dates, I would be quite naive about things. So I'd kind of fall in love with someone very quickly, do all these, make these like kind of cheesy romantic gestures.
I did that.
Yeah, and then find out the girl, the woman I'm kind of doing this stuff, like having this interaction with, she's already sleeping with this guy who's kind of a dick from like, from college or something. Yeah. And then you kind of realize, all right, now I need to maybe not be a dick, but you need to have a bit of edge to your personality. You can't just be this kind of pushover, this kind of nice guy. And you have to understand that you don't want to put women on a pedestal because, they're human, but that's not from a position of, being like a misogynist, but from the position that they're also human beings like us. I'm superficial in some ways. I'm selfish in some ways. Like you said, I want to meet someone who's the best prospect for me. And women have every right to be like that as well. So, you shouldn't get butthurt when someone's like that. You should just kind of recognize it for what it is, that you're not owed anything as a man or a woman. You're not owed anything, and you shouldn't be entitled. You should recognize that other people have their own self-interest as well.
Yeah, that was something I had to learn myself. That was, these outlandish gestures when I was like 18, 17, like if I met a girl, do all these things, and I didn't realize at the time that's putting a lot of pressure on them, and it's like a really entitled thing to do. So now to me, it's a bit of a red flag if I see a guy who just only does these huge gestures all the time, and it's like, yeah, but what are you expecting back from that, and what kind of pressure are you putting on the other person?
Yeah, exactly. And it goes back to kind of the Madonna whore complex. It's like this where feminists have this kind of idea that men have this view of women. They put them in the, like, she's either a slut or a princess or like a Madonna or a whore. And it's like they'll treat, they'll idealize some women and treat them almost as beyond human beings, put them on a pedestal. And you have to realize that, and then when that woman, behaves in a human way, they're just like bitterly disappointed and will just like lash out, and there's this resentment, like, oh, all these women are like this. And it's like, no, everyone's different. We're all human beings, and you can't just put people on a pedestal like that. And if you do, you will be disappointed. And I also think, this like, when I first like was not having any success in this, not having any success at all in the area of dating, I'd be kind of very needy, very kind of compliant, very and not very assertive, and like with the red pill stuff, there is some of that stuff which is like you shouldn't be putting people on a pedestal. You should kind of you should have boundaries. You should have self-respect. You shouldn't let like a woman treat you badly because you feel like you haven't got any other options. You should kind of put yourself out there and meet people and have different options before you actually make a decision over who's right for you. You shouldn't be a pushover.
Yeah, basic human psychology, isn't it?
Yeah. You don't need like the red pill to learn that. I think it's. I don't think you need to see women as like the enemy to come to those conclusions.
Interesting. Yeah. I think that is. I mean, is it Groucho Marx? I think like I'd never be a member of a club that would have me as a member or something like that. I think there is a real human. Like the more someone wants to be your friend, you start to go, but why would you want to be my friend? Maybe you don't value yourself that highly, and that means you don't value the person who is showering you with gifts. You're like, well, they can't be that great if they're so needy and they're like,
why do they need this to work so badly? Like, what does that say about them? Whereas if someone's a bit more nonchalant It's like, well, they obviously don't need it to work. Obviously other people find them attractive, so they don't need to. I'm not their only option, which is kind of an unattractive thing. And I think with the red pill stuff, what happens with some of these people is they pursue the pickup stuff. They get into a lot of this stuff now is about status, like presenting like a high status lifestyle on Instagram. It's partly what like the Andrew Tate stuff is about. What they do is they present themselves in this certain way. So they rent out the Lamborghini, they rent out the Bugatti and get these photo shoots done with it. They get photo shoots so it looks like they're in a private jet. They present this image of themselves that's not really real. And because of that, they attract a certain type of woman. And then when this woman realizes they don't actually have this stuff, she then leaves them. And then they say, oh, all women are like this. Yeah. But they don't realize that they're self-selecting from a very particular type of demographic, both male and female, of people who are only attracted to them, only wanting to be around them because of these superficial things. So it's like they think they've escaped the matrix because they're presenting this lifestyle. And then it's like famous people say they get rich, they get famous, and then all these people come out the woodwork who suddenly want to be their friend. And then they can adopt this very negative view of what people are actually like, but it's not actually what people are like. It's just the people you're attracting because of what you're putting out there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely does. And I know people like that who are doing exactly that kind of thing. It always seems, I guess, a bit pathetic, the whole like faking Bugattis and Lamborghinis and stuff. But I suddenly just, for the first time right now, when you were describing it, I felt like, I want to go and fake having a Lamborghini and take a photo. I've never had that feeling before. I just quite fancy it. Maybe because we're in this sort of like nice surrounding now. I feel like, let's go and pretend we're on a private jet. But to what end? So I've got one more question to ask you, but first tell us where we can get your stuff.
So you can find me on Substack. It's jamesbloodworth.com. That's my Substack. On Twitter, I'm on J_Bloodworth. It's actually X now, not Twitter, but J_Bloodworth. Instagram, james.bloodworth. My book Hired is in most bookshops, Waterstones, Amazon. And my next book will be out early 2025. So it seems like quite a long time.